This is MJ. I love comics, and right now I want to talk about vintage Marvel comics. Issue 9 of Captain America comics, starring Captain America and Bucky, might be the ugliest comic book I have ever read. And I was going to say that's saying something, but that's not saying something. I haven't read that many ugly comic books, but it's ugly not for the reasons you might suspect. In fact, I would say that there are shades of ugliness. There are a few different ways, or which is to say, there are a few different ways in which this comic book is ugly, and I will tell you about that now. So, where do we start? You know what? Actually, I'm not starting there. I'm going to start with the credits, going through the covers, whatever. You know, I like to talk about these. So, again, I've gotten to the point now that I've read the first 8 issues of Captain America. I figure I can read into the front cover what is going to be the issue in, or not what is going to be the issue, but what will be contained in the various Captain America stories in this issue. By the way, I want to report that I wasted my time. Hello, lady. I wasted my time. Sorry. I feel like a lady's giving me a weird stare, so I waved and said, hello, lady, which you heard. I don't know why I just told you that. Anyway, I wasted my time reading a Stan Lee prose story that was not about Captain America. It was also slightly racist, just like this story here. I don't know, I just felt like sharing that. Anyway, so this cover shows, I never noticed that, well, this one at least shows things kind of boxed off a little bit. So the main image is of a man with a blackened hand painting a blackened hand strangling Bucky while he's strangling Bucky. And then behind him is a dwarf with very, very thin ankles that couldn't possibly support somebody as buff as he is, holding a sword and carrying it. And then Cap has, like popping out of a picture or a painting that this painter is painting, is somebody in a hood who's shooting at Cap, and it's deflecting off his shield. I honestly... there's the Black Talon story in here. There were only 3 Cap stories this time because one, the prose, or the 4th one that should have been there wasn't. It was a Stan Lee prose story unrelated to comics or Cap or anything at all. Anyway, so we got the Black Talon. That's one story. We have the White... Is it the White Ghost? Is that what they call him? That's another story. And this guy kind of looks like the White Ghost. And then the 3rd story was about this criminal, this undying criminal. So I don't know if something got changed in the production order or if... who did the cover? Let me see. Can I see a signature anywhere on here? I'm looking around. Let's see. No, I don't see a signature on the front worked in any of the art. So I don't know if this was Kirby or Simon. I'm gonna guess it was Kirby. Although honestly, some of these faces are jank, and I think Simon might be the less good artist. So I'm gonna attribute a lot of the bad art to Simon in this issue, and I'm going to include the cover in here. So anyway, that's the very first cover. Then let's go to splash pages. Again, it says Joe Simon, Jack Kirby. This is, the White Death, not the White Ghost. So that guy kind of reminds me of a cover who's popping out of a picture frame, except he's in a green hood shooting a gun, whereas they show the White Death with a gun poking out from behind a wall panel. So... I'm going to talk about these splash covers, and then I'll get more into my criticisms of the issue outside of the overt and kind of gross racism. So, we've got this White Death is in a spooky mansion. Last will and testament. Someone's going to inherit a bunch of money. Story, which I think was in Captain America issue 8 as well. So that's one story that was represented here. I thought the cover was okay. The knife in the foreground is really cool, stabbed into the like I said, last will and testament. That's neat. The next one is about a guy who supposedly can't die. He's getting zapped in an electric chair, and we see all this treasure as he's been stealing stuff. So that's cool. And then there's a bunch of corpses on stairs leading up to like the dais, the raised platform where he is being electrocuted. And these are all his victims who were killed after his death, his supposed death. So that's actually really neat. I like how that was representative of all that stuff, or representative of the whole story. And then last one, we got a nice double page spread of the Black Talon. The Black Talon continues. He survives this issue, and he goes on to be fought by the I think it's the Young Allies or whatever, Bucky's boy Team or Kid Gang series was called. Anyway, we'll talk more about that later. But also, I want to draw your attention to these faces. Bucky's face, the shading on it, I don't like it that much. The shading's, I think, the worst part of it. The shapes and everything of the face look pretty good, and all the other faces on here look pretty darn good. But, man, some of the art in this issue is just not good. So, also, but as a side note, before I get into the bad art and then the racism, they did a decent amount of promo this episode, or in this issue, which was kind of funny. So, at Camp Lehigh, Bucky's reading an issue of Marvel Comics, and he tells, Rogers or Steve about how great it is, which is pretty funny. And then at the end of the story, very close to the actual, let me see, where is this? Very close to the, I guess, I don't know if this was the end of the second or third story. Probably the second story about the undying criminal. No, this was during Black Talon. Sorry. They feature Marvel Comics issue something, Mystic Comics, and then the Human Torch, which were all part of Atlas, I believe. I believe Atlas was who Captain America Comics was being published through. And anyway, I just find that very funny that they're promoting their own books in one of their books, and that Bucky's reading one of their books in one of their books. And yeah, so that's, I think, pretty much the bulk of the first issue. I just wanted to intro it, talk about the splash pages, because I find them so fascinating, and to me, they're kind of a big deal. I mean, they have to pull you into the story, just like the cover does. And I do think this is a pretty compelling cover, but it's just, wildly misrepresentative, which is, the style, I guess. That's how they all seem to go. So, within the first story, we got Cap and Bucky, janky faces, not looking good. At least Cap's, I don't know if it's a cowl is what you would call it or what, but that looks pretty good, like a lot better than in some other shots. But Bucky's face looks terrible, where his like eye line is all off. His eyes almost look like they're looking in two different directions. And I see that whoever's doing the inking here probably, the inker might be at fault. I don't know, but I thought Kirby inked a lot of his own stuff, but maybe this is Joe Simon, like I had suggested before. I don't know, and they do not make it clear. Or maybe Kirby was just rushing this, but regardless, it looks bad, and I challenge all of you, even, Kirby fanatics, and I'll admit, I'm not, super familiar, but I'm putting myself, so to speak, through the paces, and I read comics very slowly, but like everything I've been reading for the past like year plus has been, for the most part, or you can look through my list of episodes and stuff. I've covered all 8 of these. I think I already talked about the first, maybe the first 2, but the first for sure, Fantastic Four issue. And I'm paying my dues, and I'm going through all the Marvel history, that I care for, which was the real comics boom, and because, I'm sorry, I'm getting my fandoms mixed up, but like, the Marvel age in 62, starting in 62 with Fantastic Four. But I'm going back to Cap because I like Cap a lot in general, and I want to see how he was written back in the day, and starting in 41, and then how his character evolved over time as they interpreted him. So I'm doing that work, but like I've been subsuming myself in Kirby, and reading 8 issues of the Captain America comics is not the same as reading 8 issues of a modern day Captain America comic, because you've got like 45 pages of stories in here usually. Maybe 2 of those are Lee's prose, but I think 45 is excluding the prose. I'm not sure, but still, that's like double at least of a regular comic issue. So in terms of modern comics, I've read like 16 Cap comics, all by Kirby and Simon, and that's where I'm speaking from. So yeah, some of the art in here is terrible for them. The art is typically very good. I do like Kirby's art. I'm not trying to be an apologist or protect myself or whatever. I'm just telling you the truth. It's mostly very good, but there's some bad stuff in here, and I don't know who to blame. Some people, I've had people comment to me before, as I've done these, analyses, videos, reviews, whatever, and correct me on things. I would love somebody to speak up on that. And also, if you're checking out the audio-only version, you gotta go to my website, mjmunoz.com/stc. Look up episode 39, and you'll see this art is bad in some spots. I'm not just going to be negative. I want to represent or present both sides. I want to present what's presented here and analyze it, honestly. So there's some great art too. In the White Death episode or comic story, there's this really cool shot of Bucky sitting on Cap's shoulders, and I don't know why they're doing it or what the purpose of, but it's a cool scene, and Cap's looking up because Bucky's looking down, and they're talking to each other, and it looks really good. It looks really neat. Both of the line work, the shading, the eye lines on Bucky are blacked out so you can't see him, and there's like some nice inking and shadow work, but like it all looks really good, and this is great art in the same issue with some terrible art. So I don't know if these guys were passing off between one another or how exactly they did it. And I wonder if it was the process was different in this, or if maybe there was just like they were getting to the point where they didn't care anymore. Because I read by somebody who commented and corrected me on things, informed me that Kirby and Simon left after I think issue 10, and because there were some creative differences or maybe issues with money, and they left after issue 10, and maybe they were starting to care less already here in issue 9. Maybe they were making a fuss, and that's why the art suffered. I don't know, and I can't really say, but I'm just conjecturing here. Yep. I don't know what to say. Sorry, I'm shocked because I'm looking at an image with both their faces, and it looks really bad. It was in the bottom right-hand corner. It was in a smallish panel, and they both look really bad. I mean, I don't know what to say. You got to look at it yourself. But then there's some great stuff. The White Death, he's trying to get this potential heiress, trying to kill her and trying to kill all the other people who are in line to inherit money from this, eccentric, relative who had died, and of course, because that's a thing that keeps happening. Anyway, it's really hilarious. Well, it's hilarious and it looks good. There's this scene where he ends up throwing the lady at Cap, and I wanted to make some sort of joke, but I don't know what to say. But anyway, he throws his lady at Cap. He turns around and pops Bucky in the face, then runs off. And the motion, I don't know how you say it, like the figure work is very good. I love the energy. To me, that feels like Kirby, because Kirby does really great figure work, and like they're breaking the panels and stuff that I've seen him do over and over and over again as I've read these, so that's good. And then there's below that scene of action, there's some images of people in very small, or they're set. The scene that the perspective we're viewing from them from makes them look very small. The White Death looks fine. His hand looks fine. His face, is covered up by this hood type thing. Looks fine. Cap and Bucky look decent, and so does the lady. She looks better than them, I think. And that's just kind of interesting, because maybe this whole page was Kirby, and he did the best he could, because as they get smaller, the details are harder to put in there. But I think they look pretty decent. So given that there's his action on this page, maybe he did the whole thing, and that's why it looks so much better than the previous pages. And then there's just like some really great compositions. They're looking for the White Death as he's hidden, and Cap is crouched and like leaning over, looking through some bushes, and then there's a panel of him and Bucky standing next to each other. They're breaking the scene that's behind. There's like a round, bubble laying out a scene behind them, and then they're breaking into the next panel over, or under them, and it all looks so good. There's definitely a lot to praise in this, but there's a lot of junk too, I think, or just substandard to the Captain America comics art going on here. Then just something really cool in that story, Bucky's about to get killed by the White Death. He's going to get stabbed, and Cap puts a shield in front of him, and the knife absolutely shatters, which is really cool. I don't think they've talked about in this Captain America comic at all his shield being special. I don't think they had planned for it to be special or like especially unique, because it started off like a different shape, a standard shield where it's pointy at the bottom and broad or wide at the top, and it tapers down to that, and then it had to change for some sort of reasons. You can look it up yourself. I'm not a historian, so I couldn't tell you the reasons, but I think there were like legal reasons they had to change because it was too close to another previously established character design. Anyway, but it's interesting that they're adding more. Like the third or fourth issue in, Cap actually threw the shield. It appeared first in a Stan Lee prose story. In the comic, the way it was presented, maybe the production, he threw it at like a butterfly guy, a bad guy, the butterfly, in the comic, and we get to see that depicted. But that story appears published after the prose Lee story, so I don't know if it was a Kirby Simon idea or if it was a Lee idea or how that worked. But anyway, Cap, one of the iconic things about Cap is that he throws a shield, and that happens in that, I think it's the 3rd or 4th episode, whatever it is, he's fighting against the butterfly. And then we get this addition to the shield that apparently it's very hard. It's so hard it can shatter a knife, which is pretty neat. I mean, there's more janky faces. I don't want to belabor that. But then, interestingly enough, the second story in the issue is this this killer who's supposed to be dead, but he keeps coming, but he comes back. He's been he's sat in the electric chair. He's been killed, and then he comes back, and he actually continues his reign of terror and executes a bunch of people and goes on all these brazen daylight robberies and stuff like that. And there's this really great panel of his face looks kind of weird. He's shooting a gun. It's a left-hand shooting. Oh no, maybe it's. Okay, I looked at this a little harder. It's a left hand shooting. It's someone else's hand. It's a man's face screaming in terror. There's like a fruit stand or something being like blown up, or maybe it's supposed to be those are round things or bullets that it's getting hit with. I don't know. And then there's a lady's face. She's screaming in terror as a man is collapsing behind her. That is all excellent. It's great visual storytelling. It packs a lot of story, like packs the crime spree into one image, and it looks really great. So again, there's a lot to be praised, but then there's bad stuff too. Cap and Bucky get to wail on some thugs, and of course that looks great as always. There's this really funny part where Betty is like coming on very strong to Cap, wanting to show him appreciation. She's kind of throwing her arms around him, and Bucky runs in because the bad guy's getting away or something, and and Cap looks super relieved that he's there saving him, and Betty looks irritated, and that's a lot of fun. But then continuing on, there's also some great scenes of composition. Like I think they're going to show that this particular criminal is going to be executed again. And the scene reads like this: is the little green door to the chamber of death closes behind Nick Pinto as an eerie silence fills the prison. Then there's a clock, an image of a clock in the middle of these 4 panels that are kind of radically shaped or funky shape, and it shows him waiting and waiting and waiting in different positions, and shadows falling over his face, shadows of bars, and again, really great composition. Betty gets to be pretty cool. She ends up saving Cap as this guy Nick Pinto and some cohorts of his are trying to do a prison break, basically. So that's fun. Cap and Bucky save her all the time. She gets to save them every now and then too, and that's a lot of fun. He even thanks her, which is neat. But again, coming back to the pluses and the minuses, there's a scene where the main guy who was helping this Nick Pinto escape death is trying to flee from the arm of the law, and he's actually trying to break out of the prison as well. And we get this great series of 3 panels where he is shot and dies because he's trying to escape, and he actually turns his gun on a bunch of cops, so they blast away at him. And I'm not happy the dude died or whatever, but just like the way it's depicted is very compelling, very interesting, and very dramatic. It really pulled me in, and the moment landed, it had a really great impact. Again, let me see, which story is this? Okay, yeah, at the end of the Nick Pinto story, though, Bucky's got a really janky face, Cap's ear is huge, and it just looks really bad, but Betty looks nice. So it's kind of hard to say, like, maybe this wasn't Inker screwing things up. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but just there's a lot of examples of bad art in this. So I'm going to kind of belaboring it, except to say that it's interesting. During the Black Talon issue, there's actually a lot of good art, and there's it's in the Black Talon. There's really good faces. I think it's Colonel Duffy. He punishes them. He's making this like cartoony, like excited, angry face, and it really works. It's really sold. And Bucky's kind of being surly because they're being punished, and even Steve, they're showing him from the side again, and his ear looks big, but not as big as the other one, or as ungainly sticking out of his cowl. That's like a monkey ear, man. Anyway, but yeah, so it's interesting. It seems like the Black Death issue got maybe more attention and more care, and maybe that was Kirby working on those, or on that one, for the most part, and maybe Simon was working on the other 2 issues. But there was a lot of good action in them, a lot of good stuff. But the problem is, as good as the story or as the art was in the Black Talon story, it's incredibly racist. And I'll talk about that briefly. Let me see. Let me find my references. Oh, we get only maybe the second or third instance of Cap throwing his shield in this particular story, and again in the Black Talon story, which was neat. And we get some great faces. The villain, Black Talon, I can't remember, his name is like Hobart or Horath or something like that. Anyway, he's got some great dramatic close-ups and it looks really good. But I speak with reservations because of just how darn racist this thing is. So in a moment, I want to read to you dialogue from the issue, probably four little boxes worth of dialogue from the issue to express just how bad this really is, and just how shocking it is. And the reason I want to do that is because it strikes me as funny that people will praise Captain America as being anti-Nazi and anti-fascist and so pro-social justice and whatever. And I think Captain America stands for good things, for doing the right thing, when it's hard, and things like that. He and Bucky, are continually saving people. As far as being rooted in 1941, they made efforts to encourage people to, put a bullet in your best guy's gun by, buying bonds and things like that, and, working against the German Bund during, before America's involvement in World War II and things like that. So, it was like a propaganda piece to try to wake people up to do something right, which would be to stop, this conquering force of, German Übermensch is. How do you say it? Anyway, and, I can see getting behind that and thinking that's a good and noble and whatever. But it's interesting because the way they've done it throughout the stories is to, they've had Oriental giants they've fought, and they've had buck teeth, thick glasses, like Chinese and maybe even Japanese, or just vaguely Oriental people. And they called the people Oriental because that's how it was at the time. And I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying that's the truth. It's an accurate reflection of what was said at the time. But it's just funny that I don't know that people really look too deeply into the context of Captain America beyond that first issue with him decking Hitler. And I think maybe they should, if they want to talk about him being a certain type of character or standing for certain types of things. Okay, so this is all me reading from the comic. You can see the images. I will put these four for sure on the website so that you can see. And if you're watching the video version, you can read along or see whatever with me. So this is narration. That same night, Dr. Steiner sent for me at the hospital. With him was the most gigantic and ferocious-looking African I had ever seen. This is the doctor talking. Good evening, Pascal. This is Strangler Burns. He is to die in the electric chair tomorrow. This is, Pascal. I've read of his case in the newspapers, but I don't understand why you... And then he continues, this man... consented to donate his hand as a final decent gesture. I'm going to try to graft his hand directly to your wrist. By the way, I hadn't realized that he was doing it as a gesture, a good gesture, or a gesture of goodwill, Burns was. I hadn't caught that, probably because I was just so shocked by it. I mean, he's drawn super black. And not that black people can't be black, but there's light skin, there's a whole shade. There are a whole range of shades that people can be in their skin tone, whether they're black, white, whatever, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so I will continue. So Steiner continues, this operation was the first successful one of its kind. It may have unforeseen reactions. There is wild new blood coursing through your veins. If at any time you feel strange, come and see me at once. So he goes and sees him. I don't know if he kills Steiner or not. I kind of think he does. Anyway, he starts just killing people after that. The hand drives him insane. The black man's hand drives him insane. He murders people and he gets inspired to do art. And that's this blending of this, rich white guy, painter, artist, and a black, wild man murderer, as they basically call him in this comic. And that's just really weird. Anyway, I'll continue. So the last thing I want to read you, it says, and the Black Talon, most terrifying master of evil of all time, will, more than the Red Skull, will be back to play a more hideous, more menacing role than ever as he battles Bucky and Toro and their gang in the new sensational number 2, Young Allies. Don't miss it. I know that comics try to pump up the next issue coming up so that they will get people to buy them. But like, that's pretty crazy. Anyway, there is actually one more I want to read to you. Oh, never mind. I don't want to read that one. It's just interesting to me. This black hand that this white man, this artist, gets from this black killer, Strangler Burns, who is probably in prison because he strangled a bunch of people to death. And that's why he's receiving the death penalty. It enables him to actually overpower Cap to become a very serious villain, and it's just really weird. Think about this. This is before the radioactive spider. This is before the cosmic rays. This is before the atomic age, I guess. Steve is made special by something injected into his body that transforms his body. And if you read the issue, it says that these corpusicles, is that like corpse popsicles? No, corpse like molecules go into Pascal's hand and end up, taking control of him and causing him to become, very strong and like deranged and whatever, like Strangler Burns was. And it's just really interesting, like the way that they came up with the powers for characters at this time. It's all very vague. It's very nebulous. It feels like they're very much just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. I don't know if Cap has normal strength or if he has superhuman strength. I don't know if Bucky has normal strength or if he has superhuman strength. It's very difficult for me to tell, especially because, like, I think Bucky's supposed to be a normal, like, 14-year-old boy, if that, and yet he is very strong. He's able to best grown men on a regular basis, and, the power levels don't make any sense. But, none of that technical stuff really matters in the context of what I'm talking about, because I'm just kind of floored by this, and I guess I'm just wanting to, like, present it and share it, and, I don't know, maybe strike up some sort of conversation about it. And I'd be interested if anybody enjoying this or checking this out knows of any other characters who were like this. I would be really curious to know and to learn about them. I think I talked about Whitewash Jones in covering Cap issue 8, which was the previous one, and that was interesting. That was a bit of a doozy. And then we have even more, blatant racism on display. And like, I just want to be clear about this. And I'm not trying to attack. I'm just trying to put everything in proper historical context. I believe that there is an interview with Kirby where he claims that he never met a black person till he was in the army. So maybe that's why he, made Whitewash look like a minstrel show version of a black person. This mocking, blackface version of a person. This caricature is what I meant to say. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's why he or they came up with this idea. And I believe, I know Kirby was or is or whatever. Kirby's of Jewish descent. I don't know about Simon. I think he is. I think people like to hype the fact that they're both Jewish, and they created Captain America, and Captain America slugged Hitler in the face, because punching Nazis is cool or whatever. But like, are you then denying the fact that these Jewish men who maybe didn't know, who'd never met, who could have had all sorts of superstitions about black men, weren't racist because they were, Jewish? And the Jewish identity is very complex. Jews have fought to be white, have fought to not be white, or, were originally not considered to be white, have fought to be considered as white. Obviously, the Aryans didn't think that they were white or pure white enough. So, I mean, it's a very complicated thing, and it's very nuanced, and trying to just smash everything down into simple taglines like punch a Nazi and, cancel this person or that person or whatever for being racist, or, everything's bigoted and everything's racist, like, I think that's foolish, and I think denying nuance and denying history, not that it'll only lead to bad outcomes, but it's not going to help lead to good outcomes. And I just think we should be honest about people in their past and what they've done and their misperceptions, and like have some grace towards people. Like, I'm not going to like Kirby or Simon any less because they did these racist depictions of these characters. I'm not going to, and if that makes me a bad person, I'm sorry. All the people who, like I said, again and again and again in this analysis, bandy about Cap as being anti-Nazi and whatever, they might have to disavow him now because of this. if it ever came to light in any big public way, which I think is, silly, because then you'd be disavowing these men who tried to do good things and were flawed, because we're all flawed. And, we all fail at the things we're trying to do from time to time, some more than others and some in different ways. And we don't really need to get into that. I'm just saying it's interesting. Besides these things, my biggest problem is, given that none of these stories had to do anything with Captain America fighting the Germans or whatever, like, what's Captain America captaining? Where's the America that he's trying to save? Are we ever going to get into more stories about him actually helping to fight? And I feel weird about that, but if he's a war, based character, then he should be doing more of that. And Hydra's not in this. Red Skull's not in this. I don't know if Hydra even exists yet, or if they even had an idea about Hydra, or if that's something that comes in like the 70s or 60s or whatever when they brought Cap back. I'd be really interested to check all that out. But I'm only going to read 10, 11, and 12, 3 more issues, and then I'm going to be done with Cap and move forward in history as I cover all of this vintage Marvel. So anyway, let me know what you thought about this. I talked about a lot of stuff. I talked about a lot of touchy subjects, and I didn't demonize, but I didn't praise Kirby, and I brought up some, bad stuff that he and Simon did together, and I'd love to hear a discussion of that, and if people just kind of heap praise on him, or if they do realistic assessments of him, because I think, that's an important thing to do, like I've said many, many times in this. And I will go ahead and let you go, but I'd love to get a comment from somebody here, some people's reactions to what I presented, and everything from the racism to if Cap isn't doing war type stuff, is that good or bad? Should they have just mixed it up and done war, a mystery, and a crime thing every issue, and have it be kind of like that? I don't know. And is the format too repetitive? Is he going through the same kind of adventures too much because they're just doing 3 and 4 Cap stories every month? I'm curious to hear feedback on all that stuff. If you enjoyed this, like, comment, and share to help me grow. Don't forget to subscribe to keep current with each release. Chat with me on Twitter at MJ_scribe. Visit mjmunoz.com/podcasts to find the multiple feeds in which I analyze Star Wars, tokusatsu, comics, and more. Visit mjmunoz.com/support for links to my Redbubble and Coffee pages, so you can help me keep doing the things I do. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Until next time, be well, and may you find the strength to be the hero you needed in your most desperate hour.